Joining us now, three experts on nuclear proliferation and geopolitics. Thomas Pickering, a former U.S. ambassador to Russia, who is a member of Global Zero, an international organization devoted to eliminating all nuclear weapons. Frank Gaffney, director of the Center for Security Policy, and Gordon Chang, author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Gentlemen, good to have you all with us. Let me turn first to you, Frank Gaffney. You're critical of what the president has just done with President Medvedev of Russia. Why?
Lou, I'm worried about it in its own right. I think that he's acting in great haste under an artificial deadline imposed by this START treaty that is supposed to expire at the end of the year. He's making cuts that I think are too deep, that are unverifiable, and that, unfortunately, worst of all, mask the real agenda of this president, which is not to move in some sort of lockstep with the Russians as much as it is to move the United States aggressively and I think even unilaterally in the direction that he has campaigned for, which is a nuclear-free world. It turns out the New York Times said last Sunday that this ambition has been one he's had since 1983 when he was a radical at Columbia. And I think when you see what he is not doing to maintain our arsenal, to modernize it, let alone to test it, you really realize that what he's working towards is not so much these cuts with the Russians as a really unilateral disarmament agenda that's reckless and irresponsible.
Ambassador Pickering, I think your group has just been described as radical by Frank Gaffney.
It is radical.
Is Frank right?
No, Frank's wrong, and I think that Frank's wrong on all of the counts that he raised. First, this is a very deliberate and very careful step, certainly one approved up and down the United States government. It is not a radical step in a sense that the Bush administration already took us to 2,200 to 1,700 nuclear warheads. This is an important step because the more Russian warheads that are brought under control and disestablished, the less we have to fear those slipping out to other people, terrorists and otherwise, and I think that makes us safer day by day. The president isn't moving unilaterally. This is a bilateral agreement. It has good verification. It's the same verification that was going to be kept in the START treaty, and that's very significant. Frank has alleged, in the past at least, that the Russians have cheated, although my own feeling is either the Bush administration was totally asleep at the switch, which I cannot believe, or those particular allegations are not going to hold up. And certainly my own view is that that's important. Finally, the president has said, let's look toward a world without nuclear weapons. He hasn't proposed a plan yet. We have proposed a plan that I think is useful, but there are a lot of big issues on the way, and nobody is rushing there. And certainly I cannot believe that there is any scintilla of evidence that the president is moving unilaterally in this direction. He's moving very carefully with negotiated solutions, and obviously any effort to move towards zero would involve many other countries that have nuclear weapons.
We can't do it alone. Be a little more succinct because we do have some limits on time, and I appreciate that. Let me, before I turn to you, Gordon Chang, let me just show.
I'm only answering what Frank had to say, Lou.
I know you are, and Ambassador, I appreciate your courtesy. I'd like to just show our audience precisely what we are dealing with here, and this from the Federation of American Scientists, the estimate of world nuclear forces. This is from estimates from April of this year. Russia with 13,000 warheads, the United States 9,400, France 300, China 240, the United Kingdom 185, other nations assumed or known nuclear forces, Israel 80 warheads, Pakistan 60, India 60, North Korea fewer than 10. Gordon Chang, within the context of this level of proliferation, what does the START treaty or any effort at bilateral arms control mean to proliferation when we are faced with this disparate number of nations with nuclear warheads?
Well, I think part of the problem of those talks in Moscow was that there was one country that was not in the room, and that was China. You know, China says the Russians and the Americans have to reduce all their weapons, and then they'll start talking about their arsenal. But China is the only major power that is increasing its arsenal at this point. And, you know, the Chinese and the Russians, the dragon and the bear, you know, they ganging up on the United States, and that's a problem because they're not part of this. This is just not America and Russia anymore.
Frank, the idea that Russia, with this number of warheads, the United States, ours, is there some way in which you think it would be responsible to significantly reduce nuclear arms in the world?
Look, I'm all in favor of securing the Russians' nuclear weapons, which, as Tom Pickering says, could well migrate into the hands of terrorists, and reducing them further. The Russians say they can't afford them anyway. That's all great. I think we've got a different situation, which is we're deterring lots of different people. And I have to say, with all due respect to Tom, I think it is national security malpractice to be saying we can, let alone that we should, try to rid the world of nuclear weapons. And what's unilateral about this, Lou, which is really troubling that nobody's talking about it, is as a strategic posture commission chartered by the Congress found, if we don't take steps to modernize our arsenal and to fix the myriad problems that obsolescence and the retirement of our personnel is having with our complex that supports it, we are going to unilaterally disarm. That makes the world a more dangerous place, not a safer one.
What say you, Ambassador?
I say that we have the Secretary of Defense looking after our weapons. We've had a long program to maintain the viability of the stockpile. There is a constant look at this. People feel secure about it because, in fact, our best experts are in charge of it and certainly guarding very carefully against anything like that
absolute
happening.
Rubbish. That's not what the commission found.
Gordon Chang, North Korea with weapons, these other nations with weapons that you mentioned prominently, among them China, which is developing further weapons. What is the solution?
Well, I think part of the solution is going to be deal with Iran and North Korea now and be honest about it, because we haven't been. You know, we got to start talking to our friends rather than our potential adversaries about all of these issues. And, you know, with the Russians, we got to say, yeah, we can reduce our weapons, but you've got to stop helping Iran. You got to stop helping North Korea. You got to secure your own arsenals.
All right. Thank you very much, Gordon Chang. Frank Gaffney, Ambassador Pickering, we thank you, three gentlemen.